All right, everyone. On today's episode, we have Mr. Raj Khera, and Raj has started and exited multiple businesses. In fact, I know Raj because I was a customer of his many moons ago. We were just recently we were trying to figure out in the pregame call like when that was. I think it's every bit of 10 years, but I've always
Oh
been a
yeah.
huge I've been a huge admirer of Raj's what I will refer to as entrepreneurial drive because he started and exited multiple businesses. So I'm excited to jump in and kind of see how he ticks here. And Raj, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey Dale, thank you so much for having me on your show, and I'm really looking forward to just sharing our experiences and, as I put it, spread the love. Right?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. Well, give us a quick 30-second version of who you are and what do you do?
Well, so I'm an engineer by training. I have a couple of degrees in electrical engineering from the University of Maryland. I'm a local boy in the DC metropolitan area for like as long as I can remember. And I started my first business after being an engineer for a little while without knowing anything on how you actually start a company. So I figured out a way to actually learn little things along the way. And I've been really fortunate. I started one called GovCon, which was a portal for government contractors many years ago, and sold that to a public company, and then started another one called Mailer. And this is the one I think where you were
Hmm.
one of our clients that provided email marketing and content services. And we focused on IT companies, and we sold that to J2 Global about 5 years ago. And then I didn't want to start a brand new company and lift it. The lift to actually build a big business, it's a 10-year lift at least, I think, to really build a successful one. And so I did a turnaround with one company, and I joined as a growth advisor with another one. And so now I provide SEO coaching and other services on my site, morebusiness.com. And yeah, that's what I work on. Been really fortunate along the way. Won some awards. I'm on different boards and so on. But honestly, Dale, the biggest accomplishment, we were talking about this in pregame, is being a dad.
Yeah.
Honestly, that is my biggest reward. I really enjoy that one the most.
Yeah, and
So,
that's a topic, I want to jump in with you today, especially, like we talked, like, my audience over the last year has become business owners, and I, like you said, want to help share the love with these lessons that you've learned, to that effect, right? Like business owners can get so hyper focused on the bottom line or 80, 120 hour a week, all this entrepreneur porn
yeah.
stuff that you hear or see out there that's whatever that, you wake up and you're 50 and you put all this time in, but you've been divorced twice, your kids don't know who you
Yeah.
are, they're strangers to you, right? Like it's those things that that we have to be cognizant of. It's not just this one thing being a business owner, it's still your whole life that you got to be a part of. And so I'm excited to I'm glad you said that, and I'm excited to kind of explore that with you. I guess give us a look at kind of where you came from, like what was, how'd you grow up, how'd you end up in DC, so on.
Yeah. So, I'm an immigrant to the United States. My parents came here. So, their story is actually, so they were part of they experienced the partition of India from Pakistan and India. And so they basically had to flee with basically their shirts on their backs. And so, through building up a little bit of a nest egg there, we were able to come here. I was raised in the United States, moved around a little bit, Indiana, New Jersey, but settled in the DC area since I was 10. So pretty much this is my home. And, all my friends are here. Went to the University of Maryland, studied engineering. And, and then I had this itch to start a company. Turns out, actually, when I think about it, I've actually had that itch probably since I was maybe 12, 13 years old. I've always been enamored by this whole concept of starting your own thing. And so when I finally got the courage to leave a steady job, I did it. And there's a couple of comments from my colleagues at my engineering job. I used to work for the government as an engineer, and one of them came to me one day. He goes, "Raj, be really mindful of the sugar-coated sleeping pill." And I was like, "Well, John, what's the sugar-coated sleeping pill?" And he said, "You get too used to having steady cash flow, then you start creating a lifestyle around that cash flow. And you're young right now. Don't forget to do all those things that you thought about doing when you were younger in college and so
Hmm.
on." And so what happens is you go 10 years and it could be 20 years and you're in your 40s, in your 50s. What happened? So just be mindful. Uh, to not be so reliant on that steady income that you can't pivot and actually try to reach your dreams. And so I did that. Man, it was scary, Dale. So what I did was I quit my job and I proposed to my then girlfriend, who's now my wife for 26 years.
Which came first? You quit your job, then proposed, or?
It was a Friday and a Sunday. It was like that same weekend. So, right, you talk about the I think there's like 5 most stressful experiences in your life, and I think those were 2 of them on the same weekend: changing your jobs and getting engaged. And so, so I joke with her that she married an unemployed guy. That like so. Anyway, what we did was I really tried to build up the company. It was not really generating a lot of cash flow. We came back from our honeymoon, and my bank account was overdrawn. And I was like, my God, I just got married. What did I get myself into? She's probably thinking, oh my God, what did she get herself into? So worked really, really hard to start pulling cash flow out of the company, slowly built it up. Took a little bit of time, but then it worked out. So, but yeah, just keep at it. I think there's this focus on just being relentless, that there is no other option. Like I had to do this. And so just that really kept me focused. Long hours and so on. We didn't have kids at the time, and so that really made an impact.
Similarly, I remember when I started Corsica, we had that same moment where, and I want to honor that you said the courage to do it, right? Because, it does take courage to step off the cliff and sometimes grow your wings on the fall, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. But yeah, same thing. It was this point where I remember I was building the business through subcontracting there in DC. I was going to Main State 23rd and C, contracting myself in as a 1099, using that revenue to hire people and do commercial business. Yeah. But I remember when the business needed an administrator, and my wife had her own salary job at the time. I said, hey, we talked about it, and she was going to come in and, be what became service coordinators, our first one, and Matt and the business administrator. But I remember when we did that, I was like, my income is currently the business. Now your income is about the business. I was playing a lot of Texas Hold'em at the time. I was like, all the chips are going on the table tomorrow, right? Like when you go submit your 2-week notice, like we're all in, right? To your point, that just, and there's that necessity. Like that once that's done, you leave that security of that steady twice a month or whatever paycheck coming in, and it changes things. It's almost like similar, but like when you have your first child and something changes in your mindset on necessity, like how you need to conduct yourself, how you need to provide. And I would say, obviously it's not the same thing, but similarly, like when you're all in, like things change, like you don't.
Yeah. The only growth I think we truly experience as human beings is when we are out of our comfort zone. Because if you've got that nice lifestyle, which is great. I work toward having a nice lifestyle. But even today, and I'm in my late 50s right now. And so even today, I still push myself, because if I almost feel uncomfortable with being too comfortable, and so, while I'm not looking to start a 100-person company anymore, I am doing coaching for SEO and teaching people things, but I'm learning about course development. I'm learning about these things that I've never done before. And I'm really excited about it, because it just gives me, it just gets me up in the morning. So, yeah.
And that's it, right? Like, who wants a life where you like don't want to get up in the morning because your job sucks or whatever, you're not doing something that you enjoy.
And to business owners, I often say, they because I talk to many business owners too, and they talk about, wow, this is so hard, getting a business off the ground. And really, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. And there's a lot of people out there on advertising on Facebook and Google and talking about how easy it's hard. If you want to do something substantial, there's a lot of work you got to put in, and you have to make sacrifices. The one thing that, I guess I alluded to earlier, being a dad, the one thing I did not make, it was kind of like an off limits thing, was family time. And I really made that it was family time. Then I worked, and that when I started having kids, that is. So that was important, and I can see the fruits of it.
Walk me through. You touched on it a little bit, so I'm not too clear. Like, you went to college to get an electrical engineering degree. Like, what was your plan? Was it, yeah? So you were working a job. Like, what type of job was that? And what was that transition point like that made you go, you know what, I'm doing my own thing? Like, what was kind of happening in that situation?
So yeah, I wanted to be an engineer just for the longest time. I remember when I was, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years old, my father bought me this little Radio Shack. Back then it was called a 65-in-1 kit, and it had a resistor here and a transistor and a capacitor, and you could put these wires together and make a radio. I was hooked. I thought this was so cool. And I was like, I definitely want to be an engineer. So, I studied to be an engineer. I didn't realize how much math there was involved in electrical engineering. A lot of math. So I enjoyed it for a while, probably about 8 years, and I just felt unsatisfied. I felt like, there's just more. I was going to conferences, I was writing papers, I was, starting to like build my footprint in the electronics. I was a semiconductor electronics engineer in the semiconductor community, and it just was not fulfilling. And then I remember what my friend had said, like, watch out for the sugar-coated sleeping pill. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm already swallowing it right now. I gotta pivot. And then so yeah, I forced myself to just say, okay, Raj, when you were 12, 13, you wanted to start your own company. Let's just do it. In hindsight, what I should have done is probably worked for another small business to learn how to do it. Instead, I just like went all in. So I would have probably done it differently the second time around, but you do what you do. And so what I did is I knew that I did not have any training on business, and I had to figure out how to get clients. I could do the work, but I didn't know how to get clients. So I back then there's no internet or anything. I went to the local library, got a library card, and I checked out 3 books on marketing, advertising. And I go home and I start reading some of them. And then I did this, and 3 weeks later, the books were due back. So the ones I liked, I kept, I renewed, and then I just finished them. I did this for a year, Dale. And it really taught me, oh, there's all this new side of like the world that I'd never been exposed to. I mean, I was like the engineer, heads down, doing all the technical work, but like all this business side, the soft skills, which a lot of my engineering colleagues, they look at soft skills as like, oh, that's like easy stuff. And honestly, it's not easy at all. So like,
Yeah.
and so you build those, how do you network? How do you go shake someone's hand and say hello? That's not something that we're all taught, right? Look them in the eye, where, my colleagues would look at their shoes when they talk to people, because that's what a lot of, technical people do. Sorry, that's
Sure.
just
Yeah.
kind of the way it is,
Yeah.
And so really it was a growing experience, and I learned about starting to get some clients, and I started to get a few clients doing little part-time gigs here and there.
What
Consulting
was
too.
this first business? What was it?
So the first business was actual, it was technical writing. And so, interestingly enough, there's like Steve Jobs, when he gave his graduation speech, had this quote about, you got to have faith that the dots will connect, something like that. And so I realized what I was doing when I started to generate business for my technical writing work, which because I mean, being an engineer, publishing research papers and everything, I knew how to do technical writing really like pretty well. And so I would start writing articles that other engineers could relate to talk to them about the types of services. So it was content marketing, really, before people call it content marketing.
Sure.
And I came up with this library of how to do this, how to do that, about 20, 30 articles that I would publish in print newsletters wherever I could get published. And so that's where I started getting my first handful of clients. And then when the internet started coming about, I was like, oh, we should pivot. We could probably help people create websites. So that was actually the first business, was helping others create websites. And I'm like, well, why don't we? So my brother, who was finishing, he has a PhD in computer science. And so he was finishing his degree at the time. He's like, yeah, let's start. This internet thing could be big. This is like 1994. So like, oh, what's the internet? So we took some of those articles and we created a website, and we used that as a showcase of, these are the like, we could create a website like this for you. So we started getting a few clients, but then something really weird happened. IBM's ad agency called me and said, can we advertise on your website? And I'm like, advertise on a website? This is just like a showcase. I'd put my articles on there and everything. And I'm like, trying to think on my feet. And I said, yeah, okay, sure. And they're like, how much? And I said, $250. And they're like, sure, done. Send me an insertion order. I'm like, okay. First thing I did when I got off the phone, I realized they said, okay, way too fast. I should have priced it higher. And the second thing is insertion order. What the heck's an insertion order? I didn't know. I was a technical guy, right? I'm typing in. I don't think Google was around even back then. I'm going to Yahoo's directory to find out what an insertion order is. And it's like, okay, that's the advertising contract to get. So I download one, create a template. A week later, and I've got IBM's ad on this website. A week later, the ad agency for Fidelity calls. Can we advertise on your website? And I'm thinking, I'm going to be real smart this time. Yes, $500. Okay, send me an insertion order. I'm like, damn, too fast. They said yes, too fast again. So I started learning about price resistance, right? You don't learn this in engineering school. Right. You learn it in business school, which I didn't go to. So, and then it happened again. And I think it was Adobe that called. And so I was getting these calls from all these people. I'm like, wait a minute. We could do all this work by putting together people's websites, which is consulting work, time and materials. Or I could just take advertising. How about if I rotate ads through and just charge people? It is so simple. I collect money. And so that's what we did is we like developed this little tool that was an ad rotator and a bunch of other that we redesigned the site. We branded it morebusiness.com. So it's actually been around for a really long time.
Oh, wow.
And we started just creating more content around it. And it became a site for small business owners to just come and just look at. I just ran that site part-time as a business where it just got advertising on. But what we did is realized, wow, there's a market for people looking for niche content. And so there's another guy who's actually a mentor of mine. He's like, there's a big niche around government contracting. There's this database back then, it was called the Commerce Business Daily, where you would get bidding information for government contracts. Anything over $25,000 had to get published in the Commerce Business Daily, which was a print newspaper thing. The government printing office would send it out. 3 days later, you'd get a copy. You'd get your fingers black with the newsprint. It was just, but that's what you looked at. So what we did was we bought the rights to the electronic version of the Commerce Business Daily. They would publish it one day ahead of the print publication. So we would actually get the data a day before the mailer went out. So it'd be like 4 or 5 days before anybody got the data. And we stuck it online, made it searchable, and gave it away for free. The biggest question we got, why are you giving this away for free? How are you giving it away for free? It was because we were tossing ads up there like crazy. I mean, when you have something that is fresh data every single day that gets published, people have to go to the site. And we grew like a rocket ship. And then we're like, well, people probably don't want to just come to the site, search it. How about we charge, if they give us keywords, we can just email them in the morning. So they get to their office and in their inbox is all the bids that relate to their keywords. So we would charge money for that. So we got a lot of subscribers. And our customers, Dale, were IBM, Caterpillar, all the big giants, and then tons of small companies. And you talk about being a scrappy entrepreneur. We're trying to figure out ways to make more money. So in government contracting, there's a database called the 8A database. And there's a list of minority certified companies. It's about 4,000 or 5,000 of them. Finding that list was a 3-week job for me. I was making phone call after phone call. This predates a lot of what's available right now.
Because what do we talk about? Like late 90s at this point?
Yeah. We're probably between. So we started GovCon in 95 and we ended up selling in 99. So it's like right in that period. So like around 97, 98, it took me 3 weeks of phone calls and everything. I found one office in downtown DC, not far from all the museums, where there was the keeper of the disk. This lady had the database. And I said, well, how much is it? She's like, $25. I said, done. I'll buy it. I was like, well, you need to have a certified check and this and that. So I got the check. I drove to DC, couldn't find a parking spot, double parked, ran inside, hoping I wouldn't get any, just gave her the check, got the disk, and I came back. And it's public information. It's a public database. But it was so valuable because it took me 3 weeks to locate where this was. And I knew many, many companies wanted it. So I said, is this okay to redistribute? And she's like, yeah, this is government, public information. So we took the data, created a database with it, put a little extra polishing touches on it, a little more, like how to use it and instructional stuff, created a floppy disk, and sold it for $99. And I cannot tell you how many of those I sold.
No kidding.
It was so, because we had about 100,000 customers of GovCon, and we do an email I think every week or so. And so the large companies are constantly looking for 8A small businesses so that they can find, so they can satisfy some of the government requirements for their contracts. So like really being a business owner is just about being scrappy. Nobody teaches you this stuff. You don't learn this necessarily in business school unless you see it as a case study and what someone else did. But it's about just being scrappy and figuring stuff out. I mean, I have story after story of like stuff that we did. And you know, I guess one of the funny ones was this was the late 90s. So all the tech guys had ponytails. So my wife says, well, why don't you grow a ponytail too? When you go to networking events, you'll look like one of the tech guys. So I tried and my hair would always curl. I was like, honey, I cannot grow a ponytail. I'm just not doing it. So I just left it at that. But it was good. GovCon became quite popular and actually owned the trademark GovCon. When we sold it, the company that bought it forgot that they owned the trademark, and now you can't get the trademark. They lost the trademark, and GovCon is used everywhere, the term. But I was actually the owner of the trademark GovCon.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
So that's 2 businesses so far. So you had more business originally than GovCon. How many businesses have you founded and exited so far?
So I sold GovCon when I was 35, and I had in my wallet 3 years prior, I'd seen this thing about Jim Carrey, and he did this, the actor, where he wrote a check to himself and he kept it in his wallet, and he would look at it when times were really rough. And so I was like, that's kind of cool. So I actually wrote a check, had a large number on it, and I put it in my wallet. And you know as well as I do, and every business owner listening, there are times when it is lonely and you are scared that the floor is going to fall out from under you. It is common, and it is okay to feel that. It's not good when you feel it, but it happens, right? And so there were a lot of those times, and so I would look at that, and when we sold our company, I looked at that check again, and it fell within 2 weeks of the date that I'd put on the check. How that happened, I have no idea.
It's a reticulator activating system, man.
I think so.
I mean,
I think so. You know, and I was like, wait a minute, that was pretty freaking wild. You know? So I realized the importance of actually not just setting goals, but setting goals with dates on them, you know, and then that check in my wallet was a way of setting a goal. You know, I looked at it kind of pretty regularly because it was manifesting itself in my head that like this is where I wanted to go, and then it just naturally gravitated. You know, things just like came into place. You know, you got to take advantage of the opportunities. You can't just like, oh, I'm not going to do that. One of the reasons we sold is I saw the writing on the wall that we were the biggest government contracting portal in the world. Our next biggest competitor was less than half our size, and there were several companies looking to buy us out. And what I noticed was there's going to be a consolidation, and if we're not ahead of it, we're going to be left behind. And so, as I saw the companies get acquired, I was like, yeah, we should also explore that as an option. We're not big enough to go. We're not going to go public. We're, you know, a tiny little company. And so we got a book together. Oh my God, learned a lot about selling a company then. If I could do that all over again.
yeah. The things you learn, but that's it. Like, you've got to go make those mistakes too, right? Like, you know, that's just a part of it. Cause you know, back to, you know, your mention of courage, like that's a part of the courage it takes to be a business owner, is to be the fool, like to go make the mistakes, like write your goal, write your thesis of how you think it's going to turn out, and then go. Cause you can think yourself into 10 years of inaction, right? Like you can sit there and everything to think about. Yeah. But the problem is you could have been thinking about those things as you determined if they worked or didn't work, right? Just go, and you're going to make mistakes, man, but you're going to learn them. And book after book, I tell people, you know, like all these books say the same stuff. They often come back and they say the same things, just in different tongues, languages, personas, whatever. And that's one of them. Like, you know, just those mistakes are invaluable, you know, that, and you take them, and I'm sure you learn from that, I guess. And that was kind of one of my questions I have for you. Like, you know, why sell a business, right? Like, you know, you've exited, you've sold businesses. Like, why not keep them and let them kind of continue to cash flow themselves, or, you know, like pay someone else to do what you're doing, and then just not necessarily detach but just let it be its thing. Like what's the reason one would sell a business instead of
Yeah.
keeping it?
So there's several ways to answer this, and I think if I had to really synthesize why, um, it I guess it would boil down to where you think the opportunity is for your growth.
Mm,
If you have a really nice, steady lifestyle business, that's also perfectly fine. I mean, my dentist has a great lifestyle business, and doesn't work in the evenings, unless there's an emergency. And so, like, having a lifestyle business is really good. And actually, my second business, Millionaire, I wanted to start it as a lifestyle business.
mm,
I ran it as such for many years until I saw, ooh, there's a big potential, and then I really dove deep into it. Um, but there's nothing wrong with having a lifestyle business. The reason that I sold the first one was because I saw the writing on the wall that if I am not part of the consolidation, I will be left out in the cold.
mm,
And it's interesting because like 2 years later, I was talking to somebody else who had an offer on his company back in the dot-com days of like, yeah, they offered me $18 million. I didn't take it. I should have taken it. The company's worth 1 million now. I'm like, yeah, that
mm,
was what was happening back then. It was
mm,
the price to fantasy ratio. You just get whatever you want for your company, as long as it said .com. And so then, you like, we looked at Mailer. Now, I ran Mailer for about 15 years. And I started it with the full intention that I wanted to make sure I was there for my son's first steps, that I was there to coach my kid's soccer team, that I was there to watch every dance recital that my daughter was at. I wanted to make sure I never missed those opportunities you cannot get back. Once they're gone, they're gone. And so I really built it as a lifestyle business. Um, and I saw several other email marketing companies start to just grow really fast. Constant Contact started right around the same time. They took off. Several others built and sold. But we were just kind of slow and steady. And then probably like 7, 8 years into it, we'd gotten acquisition offers. That's one of those things, like if you start a tech product company and you've got any kind of like customer base, you will get offers. It's just the way people consolidate. And so we were entertaining, venture capital, we were entertaining um, private equity. And I remember one of the deals that we were pretty close to signing, just it fell through. And I was like, well, what happened? Why did it fall through? And we just looked at the opportunity and it's like, you know what? We can't just be only an email marketing company. We need to offer a little bit more. And as I started doing this blue ocean type of thinking, um, I saw there's this big opportunity to pursue IT companies because I'm a tech guy. I can totally relate to this. They don't know as much about marketing as that if they knew like a few extra things, they could really take off their business too. So I started testing the market with that and started doing webinars with some of these like Barracuda and like a lot of these leaders. And I guess the message that I was sharing seemed to resonate. I think that's actually probably how we found each other. You might have attended one of like SolarWinds or one of the I was on the webinar circuit.
sure.
And
Yep.
so then that's when we started seeing a lot of growth potential. And within 2 years, that space was like 20% of my business. It grew very quickly
Mm,
because there was such a desperate marketing need for IT companies. So yeah, that's how we grew it. And then again, when is the right time to sell? Could I have just continued with that as a lifestyle business? If it was a service business only, probably yes. But because it was a product business, I think there's a shelf life. You have to continue to iterate, evolve your product, or you get bought out,
mm.
or you buy other companies out. So I actually bought one other company, and so I've gone through that part of it too. But we just looked at it and was like, it's time to sell. We're getting a couple of offers. Let's just entertain them. And so we got another offer and sold. And I can share you some stories about like selling. My God, the nightmares of those. Oh,
I mean, by all
the
means,
questions they ask.
because it's just
Oh,
it is for me when we were going through selling Corsica, like it was, the funny story was we knew so little, and I know the partners wouldn't mind me telling the story, but it's we had an unsolicited offer just after a lunch, basically, and we were going to take it because, like, hey, yeah, this is awesome. We had a partner that was looking for an exit, and it was
mhm,
like, hey, this is a great way to fund it, kind of, work with it, whatever. And we were working with a lawyer up in Manhattan, and he's going over the LOI or whatever. And as he's talking to us about this offer and us taking it and whatever, and he goes, well, who's your broker that you're working with on this deal? And we're like, what's a broker? And he's like, what? And he's like, in classic New Yorker style, he's like, what do you mean? Like, you're not working with someone? Like, how do you know this is a good, like, what are you doing? And he's like, is someone going to knock on your door and you're going to sell them your house because they put a check in for, like, what are you doing? And so he introduced us to a guy, but it was all learning. It was just, we had to learn, we had to go, touch the hot stove and realize that hurts, or what was, good and what wasn't. And but that was it. And so that, that was another chapter, because none of us, we were just growing the business. We weren't really looking for an exit. It really wasn't something that we thought about. And even though, you get that question, right? What's your business plan? What's your exit plan? We were of the mindset, we were all entrepreneurs, at heart, especially like the way Corsica grew. We merged with Larry and Andy's company, Dwayne and I, but we all had fundamentally, we just wanted to deliver a great service. We just wanted a great company. And we all lived and died in business by the mindset that if we do a good job, the profits come. Like, we didn't need to get hyper focused on the bottom line. We got hyper focused on what our customers were asking us and how we could deliver. And we knew the profits would come, and it just did. We didn't, whatever, and every investment group, they never want to hear that story, but that's the truth. We just focused on, delivering good service. And did we figure out a formula that worked? Yeah. But anyways, back to selling a business, we had no idea what we were doing,
The first time I saw a data room, which was like with the due diligence checklist, I just about peed my pants. I mean, like, they were asking questions that I had no idea how to answer, because they're asked in such a tricky way in some cases, not all of them, but some of them. And I'll give you an example of one of them. I was sharing this with another friend of mine not long ago who was looking to sell his company. And I said, so did they ask you the question about what percentage of revenue comes from your top 10 clients? And he goes, yeah, they asked me that. I said, so be careful how you answer that. What they're assessing is risk. Because when somebody buys your company, they're buying potential and hedging against the risk that they're going to lose clients. So if there's a risk that they lose half of your top 10, and that accounts for half of your revenue, that means suddenly 25% of the cash flow is gone. And so they really have to be mindful of, what can you do to make sure that you retain those? And I said, so the way I answered that question was not just, oh, here's the list, which is all they asked for. And my team members are like, well, this is all they asked for. Let's give them this. I'm like, no, we have to add narrative. And the narrative is, add a separate column and say how long each of these people has been a customer of ours. 7 years, 8 years, 12 years. So then the narrative is, it is very low risk. There's a very low risk that these customers would move. So then suddenly they got the top 10. They saw it was actually not 50%. It was like probably closer to maybe 10, 12% of our revenue. And so, because we had like thousands of customers, but we had some really big ones, and they're paying us like a few $100,000 a year. And so that was comforting to our buyer. I think that's actually one of the things that helped make the sale go through, is the way had that been my very first sale, I would have probably just answered the question. But I realized, having done this before, that, oh, they really want to know some deeper stuff. They're looking for skeletons in the closet. What's going to come back to bite them? And so you just got to give them that level of comfort.
And it is wild how much diligence is done. I remember Larry, like, they were looking at Twitter posts and like all kinds of stuff. And I remember we got called into a meeting through the process, because we talked to a ton of different companies and whatever. I remember one we were in, and someone goes talking to my partner and CFO Larry, like, Larry, he had sent some tweet to the Hulk, whoever, I don't, Mark. The guy that plays the Hulk in Avengers, like, I guess he had sent some like crazy tweet to him one night, like, just political crazy. They're like, what was going on with this tweet you sent to Mark Ruffalo in 2016 or whatever? And we were all like, what? I mean, but you're right. Like, when you're selling a business, right? Like, and I like to tell people, it's like, like the way I learned initially, it's like selling a house, right? Like there's going to be inspections, which is the diligence, and you're going to need to produce, just like you would in a house, like you would maybe produce warranties or whatever, and so on and so forth. And you're going to need to produce like everything about your business. And I feel like you really almost want to get it to where it is that machine that doesn't need you, or very clear on how it works and whatever. So that you can make the case for its value, right? And then sell it
Yeah.
and so on.
I think one of the biggest business lessons I have learned, and I remember now someone telling me just when I was starting my company, was build for an exit. You may not think you want to sell your company. There will come a day where you will sell your company.
Mm,
It might be 20 years from now. It might be 5 years from now. But if you build processes, it just makes it so much easier for someone to buy.
yeah.
So I remember after we'd sold Millionaire, I was having dinner with the guy who was integrating us into their company. And I said, well, so how many companies do you talk to that you eventually buy versus the ones you don't? He goes, oh, we talk to quite a few. We probably buy maybe a third that actually go through due diligence. So like if they talk to a bunch, only a small segment goes through due diligence, and then a third is who they actually buy. And I was like,
Mm,
oh, really? So what made you buy us versus the other ones? He goes, well, you guys had the full package because we had all your data, all your numbers, and the due diligence process was really fast. It's usually can be months. They had compressed this down to just a matter of weeks. And that is all my partners and I did for those couple of weeks. Our entire staff was like, what's going on? Why are they just like locked in those rooms? Is because we needed to create all these numbers. And there's an exercise that you go through about like converting your monthly cash flow into daily cash flow for a SaaS business. There's all kinds of ways they want the data presented. And they're really good questions. I'd never asked myself as a business owner probably half of those questions. And then I thought about this afterwards, like, these questions actually help my business run much more efficiently. That we're
mhm.
selling now, we're going to sell the company. But if I had to redo it, get your hands on a due diligence checklist and just answer those questions. And it'll take you a little while to answer those questions. But
Mhm.
when you do, you are going to be so ready, so ripe that once a buyer comes along, you're going to be more ready than someone else because there's a guarantee. I mean, unless you're as large as like you're the only player in town, which we're really probably not the only player in town, the buyer is looking at 10, 20, 30 other companies before they
Mm.
make a selection on who they're going to buy. So if you're ready with all your numbers, all the questions from your personal due diligence, you're going to have a much better leg to stand on. And you
Yeah.
need to command a higher multiple because they're going to be like, oh, this company's run pretty efficiently.
Yep.
It's less risk, which means we can pay more for it. So
I
that,
I agree. It's
yeah,
like I kind of like a root philosophy of mine has always been like give them something to say yes to, right? Like always
mm,
make that your focus to give them something to say yes to. That was when I was talking to prospects,
yeah,
prospective
yeah,
employees, whatever. And even I appreciate what you're saying because I felt the same way. Like first time going through selling the business, I knew we were going to sell it again. It's just the way that world works is with private equity, whatever. Like
yeah,
they're just like they come in and want to increase value and sell it to another ownership group or whatever. So
yeah,
kind of coming off that, my mindset as we were bringing in new people, I was like, we're building the data room for the next 5 years. Like we're going to
yeah,
be, everything's going to be documented, processes. And that was like more ongoing pain, right? Because it is a lot of work, but it was so necessary because I just because that's the truth, right? Timing and having that's a ton of work. And especially like us when we're 200 people and multiple different regions and so on, that's a ton of work that you don't want to be like stop the presses. Everything has to stop in order for everyone to get due diligence done. You don't want to be there. Like, so get it
yeah,
done now as we're going, as we do all these things, like have a data room built so that when, like you said, when the time comes, yeah, I'll send you the link to it and
yeah.
it's done.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. That was a big learning experience I had. And so like every time we try to do that now, like I advise companies now is I just try to get them to set up processes. Think even when it's like a one person, two person, 10-person company, like think through that. It doesn't seem like it's important. It feels like it's a pain in the neck, and it is a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
But yeah, like to your point, Dale, you'll like thank me later.
Well,
That was
look, the lowest hanging, uh, uh, analogy I can give people on that is try to give someone something to do without a process.
Mm,
Right. And because a lot of business owners do that. Like, well, by the time I get it all done, I could have just done it. That's
mm.
not the point. That's the point for one time, the first time. But the leverage of getting that process done, the leverage of the ability to delegate thereafter, when you can go, hey, here's the instructions. I need you to go start doing this now. Every Monday,
Yeah.
you need to do this, or every day you do this, right? Like the power of getting your processes done. I agree. It's something that I teach on it. And it's not just business, it's everything. If you don't have a process, if you don't have a defined system of processes, you really have nothing to measure against, right?
That's
Because
right.
if every day everyone's doing something different, or you guys are always firefighting or always reactive mode or chasing squirrels or whatever, like you can look at your numbers at the end of the month all you want, and then go ahead, try to see how you can change them. You don't have the levers that you need, but the levers that you need to change your lagging indicators, right? Your P&L, your balance sheet, whatever, your customer list, whatever, like that really is rooted in your processes. And your process is where you pull those levers. You go, well, we
Yeah.
did this and we changed this part of process, and the result was more clients or more revenue or less expenses, whatever.
Yeah.
But until you have that process, it's really hard to call those types of strategic shots, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. And, one of the reports I used to do is called a trailing 12-month report. And so, a lot of times businesses can be cyclical. Maybe in December business slows down. Maybe in the summertime it slows down. Um, so if you create something called a trailing 12-month report, this was so valuable to me. I could spot a trend that we had to do something about much faster, because what it does is you take all the revenue and you total it up for 12 months, and that's one chart. Okay, that was April. Trailing 12 months, we made this in the last 12 months. And then for March, you add up whatever 12 months before March. So it takes all the seasonality out of it, because you're accumulating like everything we did in 12 months in one bar. So when you look at this, if that's not constantly going up, or at the very least steady, if you see a dip, that means over the last 12 months, you had less revenue coming in, and you can see that before it's too late. A
Hmm.
lot of times people they're looking at P&L statements, and yeah, I know it's December, we're going to get less money in December, we'll look at it in January. But if you do this trailing 12-month report, it actually generates a nice chart that you can get ahead of. And like, oh,
Hmm.
we got to pour a little bit more into marketing, we got to advance our sales, we got that kind of stuff. So yeah, to your point, like when you got these processes, uh, it just, you gotta run your business, right? It's not going to run itself. Somebody's got to do it, and you got to put those processes together.
Yeah. What do you
Yeah.
think? Where do you see other business owners fail or go wrong?
So I think the processes is actually like a big part of that, is that a lot of times they'll do stuff based on gut. And a lot of times, most of us, I think, are wired to not really go into danger. And so danger could be perceived as something that's out of your comfort zone. We don't get any business from our website, so I'm not going to really work on it. Well, that's because you're not getting business because you haven't worked on it. There's actually, like, if you did, like, there's like 7 things, if you did on your website, you would just instantly start getting found.
Hmm.
And so, and I know a lot of people that like implement some of these little tweaks that I teach in my free online guides and everything. You actually start elevating. So it's like, it's just staying in your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone. Do it all the time. We make these habits and all that. I think that's really like a big thing. The other mistake, and again, this for me, this was my personal thing, and we talked about it, is like really pay attention to your family, because your kids will grow up. Like, I mean, this fall, I can't believe I'm going to be an empty nester. I mean, like, so
Oh,
now I'm
wow.
starting this other chapter of my life, and I'm like, thankfully, I can have conversations with my kids. And now, like my son's in his early 20s, and we're having like grown-up conversations. And so it's really nice to see. And I just know it's because there's that thing that we created. I was always there cheering him on at soccer games. I was always, so pay attention to your family. Don't let that go. There's nothing else in life that's more important.
Mm.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Solid. So what are you working on now? Like what exciting are you working on now?
So, this morebusiness.com site that I had for years was just a little part-time thing. It was there. We would add articles periodically. Well, over the years, it started to get a lot of traffic and started to get lots of links pointing to it, like close to like 700,000 other links from around the web pointing to it now. And we get about 50 to 60,000 visitors per month coming to the site looking for small business information. And so one of the reasons people come is for the sample marketing plans, sample business plans. So I've over the years, I've written full detailed plans for running an MSP or starting a SaaS business, marketing plans for MSPs, marketing plans for technology companies. And then I, through partnerships, got stuff for other industries. If you typed in pizzeria business plan on Google, we're like one of the top 3-4 searches that comes up, like clothing business plan, stuff like that. So we get a lot of people coming for these plans and they download them. And one of the strategies that a lot of people miss is search engine optimization. And I know I didn't consciously do this as I built my businesses, but I guess when I look back on it, we did stuff that if people do now, it can really help it. SEO is always changing because people are figuring out bits of Google's algorithm. So then they make updates and then the rankings change. And you have to always be on top of it. But if people really paid attention to that, they would be able to grow their business a lot faster. And it starts with keyword research and everything. So over the last several years, since I sold my last company, I've been diving hot and heavy into learning SEO. And I've gotten to the point where I can actually, with pretty good accuracy, figure out what topic to write about in almost any niche based on doing research for keywords. So what I do now is I provide coaching services for SEO to marketers inside companies to help their marketing teams learn it, because it's a hard to acquire skill. It's so much easier if somebody's just telling you how to do it. Or to business owners who are also looking to ramp up without investing tens of thousands of dollars in paid advertising, which you don't have to. There's so much opportunity. I'll give you an example in the MSP space, since you and I both came from that. But we're not marketing to that necessarily, but we came from. So on Google, just in the United States alone, in the last 30 days, there are about 10,000 searches on the term managed service provider or related terms, managed services provider, managed service providers. People spell it differently. And then if you add managed service provider near me, there was 1,000 searches being done. And then if you start tweaking that and adding the words data security, computer services, IT services, and then add in location, for example, managed service provider Denver, those start to really show you how many searches are being done. The big terms like managed services provider, those are really hard to get found on because the way Google looks at it, like those are already, like, people have done a lot of SEO, very competitive. Managed services provider Denver, not hard to get ranked on. There's two numbers you look at. One is search volume and one is keyword difficulty. Keyword difficulty is a number between 0 and 100. The lower the number, especially if it's under, say, 30, the higher your likelihood of getting ranked. So managed service provider Denver, managed service provider Boca Raton, they're in the teens for difficulty, which means that if you actually optimize your website around that with using your local, there's things you can do to like localize your presence. When someone types in managed service provider Boca Raton, you're right there. And that starts to drive more revenue, more qualified leads. And you put like lead magnets to get people to download stuff. You capture their email, all that kind of stuff that you do in marketing. But so I teach SEO now, and I'm actually coming out with a course because I've only got so much bandwidth, to do coaching, and I've got a lot of people interested in the topic. So I'm coming out with a course on local SEO for MSPs, and then I'll be doing that for other industries as well. So, awesome. So that's my thing now, is just to my mission is to help 250 people become millionaires within 5 years of starting their company, or within 5 years of like coming to our website. Sure. If you've been having your company for 10 years. And I could tell you, like, almost guarantee you that if you plan properly with SEO, it will really accelerate your business.
Because I think, like, even in the day of social media, right? Like, because I know, like, a lot of people went like social media marketing and all that. But again, to your point, if you think about it, when we are in search of something, I kind of look at this, and you tell me where I'm right or wrong, right? because I imagine other business owners think the same way, like everything Facebook, everything Instagram or TikTok, like they're so, that's so glamorized and they're out there dancing and doing all funky stuff. But I think still the relevance of SEO is there's people out there who are looking for a service, whereas search engines, I mean, social media, like it's almost promotional, right? Like you're kind of,
Yeah.
you've got a platform to yell at the world and try to capture their attention. But search engine optimization is when someone, like you said, is saying bakery Rockville, you know, you want to show up if you're a bakery in Rockville or can service
Mhm.
someone who would search that thing. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, yeah, that is very true. And so so social media, you do want to have your presence because you want to just be out there. There may be people that you come across because they happen to be on that platform and that's how they found you. So you would want to include hashtags in all of your posts that someone would search on. So for example, I post a lot on leadership and I always put a little hashtag leadership. So someone searching on leadership might come across one of my posts. Those algorithms are really interesting because what I've seen and I've read about this happening to many people is when you first start posting, you get a lot of attention and then it slowly dips. And next thing you know, there's not as many impressions of the same types of stuff you were posting before. Not as much engagement, and it's because they're trying to get you to then pay to get boosted.
Yeah.
And so I've mixed feelings about that. What I found though is through educational content marketing, which is you provide value first. And in the case of people who provide services, almost look at the content that you're providing as consultative,
Mm,
um, and show people how to solve some of the problems, the challenges that they're facing. And so, what I've seen in content marketing is there's two types of content. There's informational, and then there's transactional. This ties into what a buyer journey looks like.
mm,
When someone, let's say, Dale, let's say you wanted to replace a TV set. You don't just wake up, go to Best Buy. All right, I want that one, right? You do your research first. I want to get a good one. I want to look at the reviews. What are other people saying about it? Does this one have the features? Is it the right size? There's stuff that you think about ahead of time. Once you see that there is social proof that people really like this one particular TV, then you're like, okay, then it lowers my risk because I'm probably not buying something that's going to be a dud. I'll invest my money there. So you've got education that
mm,
built trust, which then enable you to go to transaction. The same way, if you're selling IT services, since we were talking about that, if you provide information to people about uh, current data security risks, trends that are happening, how to protect your employees from social engineering attacks, stuff that's educational, I start to see you as an expert. Oh, wow, this person actually knows what they're talking about. So before I even am thinking I need to hire a company, I'm trying to see who can I trust.
mm.
So when you provide that value, that's informational. Now, when people just look at your blogs and so on, there's a lot you can do on the page to optimize it to get found and all that. We won't go into all that here. But if you're interested, you go to go to my website.
Yeah, go to morebusiness.com.
MSPSEO is all there. I give it all away for free. So if you look at the content on the article, what I do is I create content clusters. So it's not just one article on a particular topic, not one article on, say, protecting your business from a social engineering attack. It might be 5 articles. And the way you produce it, here's my secret. This is my absolute secret sauce, is I will have a conversation just like you and I are having, either with myself. Sometimes I put prompts on a slide deck and I just talk to a microphone, or I talk to a person and we have a conversation about what are the 5 things people need to know about social engineering. So I click record. I get that transcribed. And then once it's transcribed, it's my own words. I can send it off to somebody to polish, or I can polish it myself. And then that becomes a pretty lengthy guide, maybe 20-minute conversations, ballpark 2,000, 2,500 words. And you parse that up into 4 different pieces, 4
Mm,
different segments, the 4 or 5 questions that you talked about, each one's a different segment. You put that as a separate article, separate blog, drip it out. So when someone lands on one topic, you have a little note saying, like this article, you'll love our guide. And the guide is the PDF download that is the full piece.
mm.
And so now you've used that as a way to do lead capture on your form. And there's all kinds of things you can do to improve lead capture, conversion rates, and so on. But now you've got them. That's the informational side. You don't know where they are on the buyer journey. You don't know if they're 2 years out from hiring somebody or they're just getting educated because they're ready to buy. So you create middle of the road and then closing content. So how-to type of information could be like middle of the road content. When they're ready to buy, create comparisons or buying guides, things to think about before you purchase security services, what to ask your managed service provider. If someone's reading one of those pieces of content, they're not in the information gathering stage anymore. They're at the buying stage. So again, buyer journey. So if you've got content that they downloaded that was in the informational stage, send them a note saying, hey, you might also like our buyer's guide. Now, if they read the buyer's guide, they might be farther along the journey than, maybe someone who didn't click on that and didn't read it. And if they didn't, then you just send them more educational stuff. But if they click the buyer's guide, that's when you have a salesperson call. That's when you're like, oh, okay, hey, what sparked your interest in looking at that guide? Would be happy to answer some questions for you. And you have a much higher chance of closing a sale. So content, and I probably went on for a long time, but this is the process.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
good
the
stuff.
whole process. Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff's things that, like founder owners haven't heard before, possibly, and understanding the opportunity. Because I'm going to keep using that word that you say, like, this is an opportunity to capture, I'll say, probably warmer prospects than standing on Facebook or LinkedIn yelling at the world, right? To say, hey, look at me, as opposed to those people that are looking for you, so to speak.
Yeah. And in fact, so like just I guess I'm sticking with the IT provider space here for the moment. If someone were looking for managed service provider in Rockville, there's a lot of stuff you can do on your website, but what comes up first is Google Maps. Because what Google does is it looks at your physical location for your office and the IP address where that person is doing a search from, and that is the only thing it looks at, who is closest to you, and then that shows up as a red pin on the Google Maps. And the top 3 pins show up as part of the listing. And so if you first claim your Google business profile, it is free. Google, like, you just go to google.com/business and you can claim your profile and just follow their prompts. You put in your hours, ever look for like a pizza restaurant and want to know if it's open and it shows the hours. So it's because they claim their Google business. So you can do the same with your business. And through that, you can share posts. So if someone goes to your Google business profile and they see, oh, this person just wrote about questions to ask your IT provider before you hire them, stuff like that, they'll see your presence on Google before they even hit your website. So that's like another hidden strategy that I think a lot of companies don't tap into. Then there's a review strategy. There's like all kinds of other like things. But as you can see, I enjoy this stuff. I think I enjoy it much more than doing my engineering work these days. So
it's fun. It's a bit of alchemy, right? Like that you're playing with these different things and seeing what happens. And, I can totally understand, being
it's like
into
one
that.
big chemistry experiment,
Yeah, right.
And so like with in a fortunate position with our morebusiness.com site is that I actually just have fun with this. Like the other day, I was writing an article, and I think the article came out of frustration with the guy who mows my lawn. So I live in this neighborhood. Like I grew up mowing my own lawn, and now I hire someone to mow my lawn because I don't want to mow my lawn anymore, right? So, but the guys, I keep telling them, look, my wife and I entertain a lot. I need the lawn mowed before Friday afternoon because Friday night, Saturday night. And sometimes we'd be having guests over, and 6:30 p.m. on a Saturday night, the guy would come and start mowing the lawn. What are you doing? Like, I needed it mowed. So I kept telling him, look, you got to understand who your market is. When you're in this neighborhood, people entertain a lot. They want their lawn mowed. Like if you want to just mow whenever you want, you could probably charge less to maybe an area where people don't care about that as much. Here, can you see all the parties that are going on? So I ended up he just couldn't get it. So the next guy I hired, I said, when do you mow the lawn? He goes, oh, in your neighborhood, we mow on Friday mornings. I'm like, you're hired. I didn't even think twice because I knew what I was buying was not grass cutting services. I was buying a beautifully manicured lawn to share and enjoy with my family and friends. And it seems like a really small nuance, but that's like so now why do I talk about lawn mowing services? So on my morebusiness.com site, we get people from all kinds of industries coming. I was like, well, why don't I write an article about this? Like tell people if you want to start a lawn mowing service, just do the following. Create a flyer. We mow on Thursdays and Fridays in your neighborhood, just like little things. And then just distribute these flyers and upper middle class neighborhoods and so on. So before I started typing the article, I went and I did all this keyword research to see, I don't want to just like, how do you get like customers for your lawn care services? I found a great headline: how to find your first 100 customers for lawn care services. And that is actually a well searched upon keyword phrase that has low keyword difficulty. So I drafted this nice article. Didn't take me long to write it, maybe an hour. It was over a weekend. And it debuted on page 1 of Google. Look at that, for lawn care services. And it's still there. I think like there's like, and then it started getting like hit for like different related keywords on page 2 and it's inching its way up. So SEO really works if you know what you're doing. Like if you analyze the keywords, it works for every single industry that is out there. I mean, so now I've got this nice article that's helping lawn care service providers like get business. So
yeah, it's awesome. And I like what you said there too, that it's a great reminder to business owners is recognize that you're selling the result, right? Because a lot of people go, look at this, look at that, and they do the showcase display, but they're not talking about the so what, right? Like it's that people are buying. In your case, to your example, you are buying a manicured lawn ready to go for your Friday, Saturday,
that's
right?
what I'm
Like
buying.
that's what you're buying,
Yeah.
right? You're not
And
buying a lawn guy.
if the flyer they give to me to like promote their services had a picture of a lawnmower, I wouldn't react. If the flyer had a picture of a beautiful house with a nicely manicured lawn, that would attract my attention because that's what I'm buying.
Yep.
We're all very visual. And so there is a market where they're paying for you to mow the lawn because they don't want to do it. That's a secondary thing. But my first thing is, look at what your customer is buying. So if you're selling IT, your customer is buying peace of mind.
Yep.
That is the first thing they're buying. Then they're buying all the other stuff.
Right.
But if they can sleep better at night and not have to worry about security because you're thinking about it, you're doing the staying awake at night for them, they'll pay you.
Absolutely. So, and that's it, right? Like, and because especially, you appreciate this from the engineering background, certainly the tech background, like we can get hyper-focused on the tech, right? And then we want to go tell the world about the tech, and that's not the point. The point is to you say, like, they tell them the result of doing business with you that they care about. Like you're there to make them successful, right? Don't tell them how great you are. Tell them how doing business with you is going to benefit them. That's what they're looking for. The peace of mind,
right.
We have somebody call you back within, if we don't pick you up real time, we'll call you back within 5 minutes. Like that's the stuff that they want to hear,
Yeah. What I used to do in my mailer business is I had a hotline for the customers that were paying $100,000 or more per year for us. And it was a phone number that it was a Google Voice number that when someone called, we wouldn't pick up, but we told our clients, look, if this is a Google Voice number, it will text like 3 or 4 of our engineers and executives so we can get back to you right away. So, don't abuse it. But if there's ever an issue that you got to solve and it's the weekend, evening, or whatever, we are available for you. No one in all my years, no one ever abused it. And they appreciated it. But I did have like once in a while, one of like, our $250,000 a year customer would send a note. I'm having a panic attack. I got this. So we would all get the text. We would coordinate. Hey, Vic, are you tackling with Kevin? You tackling? No, I got it. Don't worry. They'll log on. Yeah, I'm near a computer. I'll just log on. They fix the problem. Our customers are so happy. Just have that hotline, right? So we market that, the peace of mind to our really high-end customers.
Yeah.
You just got to like keep in mind, what are they buying? What are they buying? And constantly ask yourself, what are they buying?
Yeah.
Right.
What do they value? Right. Like what do they value? So, I guess one of the things I love to talk about with our guests is like the importance of, the owner, like performance in mindset, as well as leadership. Like how important are these things to success in business? How being able to show up and do the grind and the ability to lead a team or lead to an objective. Like where do you stand on those things?
Yeah. So first, it's going to be a lonely job. There's nobody inside your company that will ever be able to, nor should they, relate to what you're going through. They will never care as much unless they have an ownership stake about your business as you do. So put that as a perspective thing. So for me, what I found very valuable is I had a professional coach for 10, 12 years as I was building my companies. I was, and to the point of what you're looking to do with businesses too, Dale, I think is really valuable. Is having a coach who's built businesses before that you can just talk to, because there's nobody else you can talk to about, this person who's doing that. And by the way, almost all the issues are HR issues. Have you ever noticed that? Like, okay, there's someone that can help you with, like, get your book straight and get your marketing in order, but most of the issues are personnel, staffing, like keeping
Leadership.
people happy.
Yeah.
And so that's what the leadership is all about, is motivating your team and coaching. So the way I look at it is if you find yourself just having this necessity to always be in control and telling people what to do, then you're really a manager. A leader coaches, and your job is to, I tell every one of my staff members, my direct reports, the first day that they come on board, is my job is to get you ready for your next job. And I hope that next job is still with us, but you should be in a completely different space, like a bigger, like more responsibility 12 months from now. And we're going to put checks in place every 3 months to have conversations that have nothing to do with the business, but have everything to do with your career aspirations. It's a safe space where you can talk about what you're feeling you're not getting out of the job, what you want to do. So what I do is I have the staff tell me what they want to do in 12 months. And most people just have never thought about this. They're like, I want to be working. I want more responsibility. I don't, okay, well, let's figure out, what does that mean to you? What would that look like? Paint a picture. When you walk in the office that day, 12 months from now, you and I are having lunch. What happens? So there's another question I asked them, and it's a 10-year question. Jane, you start today, 10 years from now, you're probably not going to be with the same company. Let's say you and I are having lunch 10 years from now. Tell me about your life. What has happened? How has your career progressed? What's going on? And that's such a disarming question, because it's not like I'm looking for you to stay here for 10 years, right? If I ask that same question 12 months from now, it's going to have to be related to the business. But when it's 10 years, it's so far away, it allows people to dream. And when you allow them to dream, that opens up what they truly want out of life. And then that, as a leader, enables you to create experiences that will help them get on their way, and that will help your retention. I had staff members stay with my companies for 12, 15 years because we employed this, I care about you as a human being perspective, as opposed to, are you doing this? Are you doing that? So the coaching is really, really critical. And I think phrasing some questions those ways, like, let's say you and I are having lunch in 10 years, what are we talking about? That really gets them to, oh, well, I want to be a CMO. I'm like, oh, great. When do you want to be a CMO? Like, what are the experiences do you think you would need that would prepare you for being a CMO? Let's see how we can create those experiences at our company. And I'm sure you've experienced this too, Dale. When you start having those kind of conversations with people, you are a different company. This is culture setting inside your company.
Yeah.
And that attracts other people.
And you get a lot of trust capital with the people that you're working with, because what's worse than you get that resignation, and you go, whoa, 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 and you're blindsided by it, right?
Totally
And you sit down and you find out, like, oh, well, I've been having this problem, and I don't see a place for me in a year from now, and a lot of this is either lack of communication or assumptions or whatever, and it's like, man, these things can be avoided. And then look, and some of the things you said is why I do what I do today. Because one, being in charge, like, it is a lonely place. So, what I'm doing today is trying to help fill something I experienced, right? Like, I had partners and all that stuff, but at the same time, like, you need a safe space, to sounding board to bounce stuff off of, and have an unbiased response that's just not a partner, not something with the company, not your spouse or whatever, like someone that's going, oh yeah, well, have you thought about this? Like, they're just completely unobjective, right? That you can feel confident what you're getting out of it from a place of positive intent. And you kind of want to make sure to kind of at least be in that position where your employees or your team or whatever can come to you and go, hey, I've got this going on. Do you have any suggestions, or so on? Or at least, and here's another thing for the leaders out there. these are difficult conversations to a degree. Don't expect them to bring them to you always. Like, you need to inquire, like, and I like the way you're positioning the questions. Like, you need to be proactive in this case, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for an employee to come and say, hey, here's my growth, because it's just a courage thing, right? They're afraid if they say this, they'll put their job at risk, or, they'll offend, you know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
so I would say, as a leader, it's important to have the courage on their behalf to solicit these conversations and get to know them and know what their goals are. That was actually a part of one of my interview questions, is like, where do you want to be in 5 years? And you hear some awesome stuff. I remember I used to hire some junior techs, and they go, really, hey, I like this tech stuff. I'd really love to be a police officer, right? Like, those are interesting things to know. And you can kind
Yeah.
of, even as the person responsible for the vision of the organization, don't you want to know where the team wants to be in 5 years to a
Yeah.
degree, right?
Right.
And that's where we're part of Lions Guide today, where clarity is so important. And you only get clarity when you seek clarity,
Yeah. 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 And I mean, just honestly, just that really requires a degree of empathy on the leader's part.
yeah.
Um, and emotional intelligence. And so these are those soft skills that, my engineering professors thought were stupid, honestly, like, if I'm being really frank. And so the leadership role that you're in now, that if anybody listening is in a leadership role, there's so much, you can take your business so much farther just by, like, having empathy. One of my, good friends, really close friends, has a certain, I guess, a theme he calls leading with heart. And it's a really, he's an executive coach in the Philadelphia area. And he just talks about how, when you put people first, just like wonderful things happen.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I find that worked for me in my businesses. I was very fortunate. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And you want to succeed, you help other people succeed.
Yeah,
Right. And
yeah. Which is like, yeah, my big theme right now is literally, I would 250 entrepreneurs, I want to make them millionaires. I mean, like, if I can do that, I'll feel like, wow, okay, I did something. I've been, like, really blessed in my life. I want to, like, give
yeah,
back and
impact.
make stuff as cheap as possible, as cost effective as possible for people. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
I think it's great, and totally relatable. And I appreciate you doing it, because, we need more soldiers in that good fight, helping other people, find the success they're looking for. And so, I guess, to bring it home, Raj, what if you had to explain, to someone you were mentoring, what makes you successful? What would you say?
So, so about 10 years ago, I was very lucky again. I was invited to give the graduation commencement address at the University of Maryland
Wow.
for their Department of Communication. And I had to think about, well, what do I say to these young kids that are just starting life? And so my speech was called How to Win the Lottery. And it was about doing three things, and it was really four things. And those three things are getting a mentor. So everybody should have a mentor. I still have a mentor, and it's actually the guy who was my mentor many years ago. He's 80 years old now. We still meet for lunch, and we still learn from each other. It was really interesting. When I first started getting mentored by him, I was in my 20s, and he'd built a couple of successful companies himself, and I was learning a lot. I was like a sponge learning from him. And we were talking about this years later, and they're like, well, we actually now learn from each other. So your mentor will learn from you, and there's a reason they want to be. And it's actually fairly easy to find a mentor, because you can go on LinkedIn and you can find other people who have done something that you aspire to do, and just reach out to them, say, hi, I'm not looking to sell anything. I'm just looking for conversations with other successful people for potential, mentorship. And if you reach out to 20 people, maybe one or two might say, sure. So getting a mentor is definitely one thing. The other thing is, do something to get noticed. I find that if you can speak well and write well, that will take you really far in your career. And if you struggle with that, just work on those skills. But publish on your website, on social media, but just get the word out about your business, about yourself, and try to be authentic. And the other thing is to create a bucket list. So that little check that I had in my wallet was one of my bucket list things. Giving a graduation speech was actually a bucket list item for me. And like 3 years later, it happened. And so little things like that, if you make a list, and I told all these college students, college graduates, had I done this right out of college, I think I would have been able to accomplish even more. And I waited till my early 40s to create my first bucket list. I was like, oh gosh, time wasted. So keeping a bucket list. And the last thing that I would say is tell stories, because stories connect with people's hearts. And in fact, I have a free webinar that I give on how to craft a really compelling story that just captivates the audiences. I'm going to make that available on my website too. I'm actually doing it for an IT company next week. But yeah, happy to share that if people are interested. So
awesome. Yeah,
those are my
no,
4 things.
all sage advice, my friend. No, well, Raj, thanks for coming on, dude. It's been a big honor. It's a ton of value there, and I really appreciate you sharing your experience and all those lessons, man. It is a lot of value, and it's going to serve many who get the opportunity to hear
Well,
this.
thank you very much for having me, Dale. I really love, like I mentioned, I love watching how your Lions Guide is unfolding, and love seeing your posts online too. So you keep up the good fight yourself, my friend,
I
and we will
appreciate it.
connect. We'll connect soon at some point.
Yeah, real quick, where can people find you, just so they can hear it one last time?
So my name is right on there. If you just type that name into Google, I'm going to be the top 12 searches that come up. I've just been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
But connect with me on LinkedIn and just say, hey, heard your podcast on Dale with Dale, and I'm happy to connect. Click on the bell. You'll be able to see my posts. I post regularly. I post lots of videos on how to grow your business, little things that you should be thinking about. So that's where you can connect with. Just type my name into Google and just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Love it. Awesome, Raj. Again, thank you for coming on. And I didn't hit half my questions, so I'm going to pick your brain some more, whether we go live again or whatever. But man, I appreciate you, and keep up the good fight, my friend.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.